Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 1 and the accounting course that you're being forced to take. Nonetheless, I'm Tim West, as you probably know from looking at the intro video, and I'm here to take you through this first part, which is accounting in context. And this is going to be made up of a couple of videos because I'm trying to do all the videos in about a 7-minute segments. And so this one is try to communicate to you why accounting can make a difference and give you a context for why you might be interested in using it. And so I'm not here to try and train accountants. I'm trying to train people who know how to use their accounting information more effectively. So that's really the goal here. And so I call this one accounting in context. And so if you don't know accounting in some sort of context, it just doesn't resonate. It's just not very helpful. And so that's what we're trying to look at in this first set of videos. So we've got these learning objectives I'm after. I try to keep these pretty focused. And so the first thing we need to spend a little time with is talking about business structures. I'm going to have an interview with a tax professional to talk about this as well, where we can go back and forth about why you might pick well, most everybody starts their business as a sole proprietorship, but then a partnership or a corporation, or what type of corporation, those kinds of things. Next thing, we need to get some fundamental terms under our belt. And so we have this kind of common language that we can talk about. And then we've got this idea of an accounting equation. I think the Accountants Union makes me say these things, that there is an accounting equation in an effort to make it look like we are a hard science. Nonetheless, we're trying to connect economic events with this accounting equation. And so that's kind of a key part of all of this discussion for this entire course, is trying to say, okay, what economic events, what things are happening, and how do those get reflected in my financial statements? Because remember, financial statements are nothing more than a story. They're just a story. The question is, do you know how to read it? And so that's what we're headed toward. We're going to talk about 4 basic financial statements. Ultimately, I'm going to be focused on 2 financial statements. And I'll just talk a little bit about the other 2, but these are going to be the focus, and we'll get to that. And if you're following along in your textbook, they also talk about these 3 kinds of business activities: and operating, investing, and financing. Now, the reason that they include those is because those are very much accounting-esque terms. And so just to make sure you know what those things are, we'll go through those to lay that down for you. Okay, next thing, I tend to distill everything down into what I call 6 bricks. Everything is 6 bricks. And so when I think about what we're building over the course of this particular module, you've got to take out of it these things. If you don't have it, that's going to be a problem for you on the module exam at the end. And so, as I said, we're looking at structure, we're looking at terms, we've got this inventory equation. We'll go a little more deeply into what do we mean by assets, and what do we mean by liabilities and equity, because people just misinterpret those things, and they don't mean to, but they need to be a little more precise. And then we need to think about how that accounting fits into the world around us. Okay. Accounting is essentially a free range thing. It's just out there doing its thing, and we need to spot where it's occurring, and that's almost everywhere. So with that, we'll do a few terms and see where that takes us. Because this part, these basic structures, I'm going to do that in a video. So I'm not really going to spend too much time on it here, other than to say these are the 3 that we're going to focus on. Ultimately, there's terms, though, that I want to make sure we get through in this opening video. And one is just, what the heck is accounting? And it's an information system. Okay. Accounting provides you information. And if you can't interpret the information, then accounting's not helpful at all. So one of the things we need to make sure you can do is recognize how those economic events are reflected in the information system. That's accounting. Okay. Liquidity. You hear people talk about liquidity a lot, and solvency. Okay. Well, in accounting terms, the liquidity part is, can we pay what we owe? That's it. Bottom line. Can we pay what we owe? Do we have that? Are we liquid in the sense of having that kind of cash or assets where we can pay what we owe? Solvency, can we pay the interest that's due and repay our debt? Okay. Liquidity is much more a short term. Solvency is a little bit more long term. And so that's kind of the distinction between those two pieces. Leverage and profitability and efficiency. Leverage is one of those terms that has a lot of different meanings, and you'll see a couple, at least two of those inside of this course. But the one that people tend to think about is this idea that borrowing funds allows you to lever or increase your capability to acquire assets and operate your business if you're borrowing, as opposed to requiring you just put your cash into it to make it happen. So if I can borrow more, I can lever the capability that I have to grow the company, have more resources to provide the services I want. Now, remember this, whenever and whatever kind of leverage we're talking about, the higher the leverage, the higher the risk, okay? Because the more debt I have, the more risk I have of being no longer solvent, because I may owe somebody so much, I'm unable to deliver that. Profitability and efficiency, okay? Don't forget what we're trying to do here is match the sales volume with our capacity to produce. Okay, so we've all had to stand in line at different times to get into a restaurant. Probably not. Well, yeah, probably now too. But nonetheless, do we have the capacity to deliver the services we claim? Do we know what the best sale price is going to be? Can we control our expenses? And are we using our assets efficiently? And I think that's one of the real challenges for most of the restaurants right now is they're not able to use their assets very efficiently because they only have a limited number of people that can be in the restaurant. So those kind of constraints, when they talk about COVID constraints, they're certainly talking about this asset efficiency issue. Above the line, okay, you hear people talking about the line when it comes to financial statements. And when I think about the line, it's an arbitrary thing. There is no one line, but the idea typically involves this idea of everything above the line is controllable by the person being measured by what's below the line. So the focus is on some sort of performance measure, usually tied to compensation, and they relate it to what that manager can control that's above the line. And then margin is probably the most abused term in all of accounting. It's got so many different definitions, and so you have to be pretty precise about it. Somebody comes to you and says, well, your margins are too low. You need to ask them, what do they mean by that? How do you define margin? Because there's gross margin, contribution margin, sales margin, segment margin. Oh, I can go on and on. So with that, I think we finished our terminology for this video, and hopefully that gave you kind of this precursor of terms that kind of put you in a place where accounting won't be quite as difficult to get through. Anyway, with that, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.